Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today, I'm going to be discussing this book, Treachery's Wake. This book is one of the D&D Iconics books. I've discussed them in the past, and what these are designed to do is be a story about the featured characters going from one level to another. And in the past, I've demonstrated, and I can actually probably post a Google Doc or something like that. But in the Savage Caves, the Oath of Neural, the City of Fire, in these books that I've gone over on this channel, you can very easily map the monsters and the abilities of the players, of the characters, to very specific levels, and also assuming that they're going through getting experience from all of the encounters in this book, they also gain enough experience to level up. I forget if this one has examples of the characters' levels and their build, but the characters in this one, and actually I'll do this again just to show the cover. That is an Ettin, Ettin, which is a two-headed giant. Now, interestingly enough, here in Albuquerque there is a game store called Ettin Games, ABQ, and their logo is a two-headed giant. Not as monstrous looking as this one, but, you know, a bit more Shrek ogre looking appearance than this appearance. This was the 5th book printed in this series, and I've been able to calculate, once again, through the encounter design. The Savage Caves is level 1 to level 2. Oath of Neural is level 2 to level 3. City of Fire is level 4 to level 5. So this one, it stands to reason, is level 5 to level 6. And I think that's actually reinforced by the book because, again, whoever was writing these, whichever authors were writing the particular installments, tried to, for the most part, fit the actual mechanics that are in the game of D&D to the mechanics of this book. The iconic characters involved in this story are Krusk, the half-orc barbarian, Lida, the halfling rogue, Mia Lee, the elf wizard, and Vidania, who is a druid. I don't remember. I think Vidania is a human. The back cover says, "A ship lies wrecked on an ice-bound coast. Desperate to recover a magic item from its cargo, a wizard enlists the help of the Thieves Guild. They soon discover that the shipwreck was no accident. The artifact's trail leads to frozen wilderness, savage brigands, and foes that no one expected. The heroes can fulfill their contract, but can they survive the consequences?" The cover art is by Todd Lockwood. Todd Lockwood was the artist for all the Iconics, and so this is Todd Lockwood's halfling rogue, Lida. This being one of those things where the mechanics are supported by the text of the book, and this is one of those things I keep on geeking out about it whenever I'm doing these books. It's just fascinating that they did this. On page 55, Mia Lee reacted reflexively. Her hand shot toward the claw as the familiar words of a spell came to her lips. 3 bolts of light and energy flew from her outstretched fingers and raced at the appendage, slamming into its armored side. The yellow glow of the missiles dissipated against the claw, sending arcs of electricity racing along its rough surface, but doing it no visible damage. She cursed under her breath as the tendrils of magic faded into the surface of the armor. Realizing that she had only a few seconds before the rest of the creature came bursting into the hold, she grabbed Malthus by the collar and pulled his body down the hall with all her strength. Mia Lee was thankful that the passage of many years and feet had worn the floor to a smooth polish. Nevertheless, strength was not one of the elf's primary virtues, and the strain of dragging the half-orc's bulk taxed her muscles to the limit of her endurance. Malthus, in this case, is a quest giver, or I think he's like an archaeologist, something like that. That is, though a bit inappropriately described, the spell Magic Missile. And at level 5, you fire 3 magic missiles with the casting of that spell. So it should have been force damage and not electricity, but regardless, the missiles sent out indicate that she is 5th level, and it also fits because this is the 5th book, so this would be an adventure from 5th to 6th level. Again, I mentioned this in one of the earlier rants about these books, but the spellcasters are the primary means we have of determining the level of a book. It's not just that number of book in series is level, though it is, but also we can confirm it because of the spells being cast. Whereas a martial, unless they are being described as getting 2 hits in a flurry of attacks, we can't really gauge what they have based on their BAB, or because that kind of thing just isn't described or written in that manner. But we know based on the spells cast, like with, I want to say it was Oath of Neural, their 3rd level, and one of them, Hennet, is 4th level, the 4th level sorcerer, and we know this because he can cast 2nd level spells, which makes him at least 4th level, but also because when he uses the spell Ghost Sound, he emulates the sound of a lion, which can only be done at levels 4+. So, in that book, we could gauge Hennet's level and everyone else's level based on the power of the casters. It mattered in that sense that Hennet, the sorcerer, was level 4 because he doesn't get 2nd level spells until level 4. Whereas the illusionist, Nebin, I think his name is, and the dwarf cleric with them would get 2nd level spells at 3rd level because they are prepared casters. They are full casters that cast prepared spells, and so they gain a new spell level at every odd level until level 17, where they cap out at 9th level spells. Whereas Hennet, a sorcerer, he gets his 2nd level of spell at level 4, and then every even level after that, so at level 18, he caps out with 9th. So that's a different book, but it goes to show as an example why these mechanics matter and how we can determine what is being done in the game mechanics based off of the narrative. And they're not always perfect. I mentioned this in a D&D server back in 2024 when I was reading this book, that in the Savage Caves, Null is able to use sleep on monstrous spiders. They were vermin, whereas the queen was a magical beast. So the queen could be affected by sleep, but not the vermin spawn of the queen. And in Treachery's wake, we have this scene. Mia Lee dropped Malthus a few yards from the crab's back. She tossed her short bow aside, realizing the futility of the weapon against the creature's tough exoskeleton. She thought her staff would be equally useless, except perhaps as a distraction to the crab, so she abandoned it as well and prepared to cast another spell. Against such a mindless beast, magical charms and enchantments would be of no use. Her magic missiles already demonstrated their futility, and again, she specifically cast Magic Missile. We know she had 3 of them, so she has to be at least 5th level. She realized that Krusk was their best hope of surviving the attack, and she set about to bolster the half-orc's offensive power. If the barbarian was going to stand a chance against the monster's multiple weapons, he was going to need more than just his axe and a little luck. She concentrated on Krusk's movements, watching his every move and getting herself in tune with his every step and shift. Grabbing a piece of licorice root, from a pouch at her side, she shifted part of her awareness to the twig. Her mouth worked the words of the spell, her delivery becoming louder and more sure as the magic took effect. Speaking the final word, Mieli shifted her attention back to Krusk and sent forth a conjuration of energy. Now, the spell she casts, we know because the material component is licorice root. And what is that spell? She casts Haste, a 3rd level spell which requires licorice root as a material component. And Krusk doesn't have a second attack through BAB yet because he's only 5th level, he's not 6th level. So this gives him more speed, more offensive potential, a bit more defensive potential as well, as his AC increases by 1. And then it says, and I will say this also, it's not a conjuration of energy. Haste, if I am correct, is a transmutation spell, but a transmutation of energy doesn't quite roll off the tongue or read the same as a conjuration of energy. And then it says, Krusk felt the potency of the magic coursing through his veins. Even in his enraged state, the warmth of the magic infused his movements and brought an extra quickness to his attacks. He redoubled his efforts. One of the creature's legs let go with a snap as Krusk's axe severed it near the joint. The remaining stub twitched and jerked, rendered all but useless with the loss of its pointed tip. Krusk concentrated his attacks on the smaller appendages between warding off the lunging claws. It is true, in that section, that mindless beasts like vermin ignore enchantment effects, charms, that sort of thing. So her usual repertoire is not useful. But she has Magic Missile, which is a force effect, which would do full damage to the crab. And also Haste, which we know because of the material component, licorice root. We can also tell some other things about this, such as because this was written during 3rd edition, before 3.5, this is the old original effect of Haste. And I'll pull my player's handbook off the shelf because that is also 3rd edition, and we can read that in full. So, Haste is indeed a transmutation effect, sorcerer/wizard and bard spell of 3rd level. The transmuted creature moves and acts more quickly than normal. This extra speed has several effects. On his turn, the subject may take an extra partial action, either before or after his regular action. He gains a +4 haste bonus to AC. I think that's reduced to +1 in 3.5. He loses this bonus whenever he would lose a dodge bonus. And this text is cleaned up in 3.5. Some of these game terms changed from 3.0 to 3.5. To continue with the effect, though, it says, he can jump 1.5 times as far as normal. This increase counts as an enhancement bonus. Haste dispels and counters slow. Material component, a shaving of licorice root. So, like I've said, this is just one of those components where it does exactly what it needs to do. All of these effects pinpoint clearly that the character is at least 5th level because she can cast a 3rd level spell. So it's just one of those interesting components of this series that really excites me. And another cool thing is that they end up fighting gnolls, spelled Gnoll, which the gnolls were the primary enemy faced in City of Fire when Krusk was introduced. So he continues fighting the same kind of enemy. And one of the things I believe I mentioned in the previous video, the City of Fire, is that some of the enemies are even given personality. They're given motivations. One of them, the captain, realizes his gnolls are dying and they back off because he doesn't want to lose any more men. He gets enraged when he sees one of the gnolls take an arrow for him, and thus the gnoll dies but saves him, and so he begins to think with that more cautious mindset. This book is less than 200 pages long. It's a really fun story, though, and I cannot stop geeking about these because I paid $3 for each one. The listed suggested retail price here is $6. It just, they didn't have to make these stories work in that way. They didn't have to make it so that the mechanics of the game world also were the mechanics of the narrative world. They did decide to do that. And it's just so cool that they're using characters' names and images that you see in the player's handbook. For example, when you go to the page on Druid, you see Vidania. The default starting package is a half-elven druid. And the animal companion is a wolf, which matches the art there for Vidania, which means they've got a half-elf, an elf, a halfling, and a half-orc. A very interesting non-human group of characters. And not all of them are necessarily the standard fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. We instead of fighter, like in the Savage Caves, we have barbarian. Instead of cleric, we have druid. But we do still have wizard, just a different wizard. We do have Lita, the halfling rogue, in that book as well as this one. So there are all of these components that make this a fun series. And if anyone watching this likes D&D novels, I think you're going to get a kick out of this. So, yeah, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.